Hell yeah. Let's go. So anyways, I am Thrill, and like I said, I founded the channel Thrill Seeker, and I also made a company out of it called Thrill Seeker Media Group. And basically what I do is I cover the entire XR industry, but really YouTube's a little bit different than that. So I know a lot of these talks are mostly about development or about metaverse stuff or about what you can do to capitalize. And really, my whole perspective is quite a bit different. YouTube is a game of trying to find out what people are interested in, and then you meet them in the middle, and it becomes this mutually beneficial relationship where I find cool things that I'm interested in, and then I find things that people in my niche are interested in. And whenever you meet in the middle, it's just this great thing where, views are up and communities are built, and just great things happen. And so my entire specialty is to find what people are interested in, because without that, I kind of don't exist. And really, this whole talk is going to be about building for a niche that doesn't exist, because that's kind of what doing a lot of VR stuff is really doing, right? We're all building something, whether that's video content, whether that's an app, whether that's a game, whether that's some sort of anything applicable to the XR industry. That's what we're all doing. We're all building something for a niche that doesn't really exist yet. And I would argue, this is probably a hot take, but I would argue that if you're building for a niche that already exists, if you're already doing something that's been done before, then you're just recreating something, right? And so I want to give just a few statistics just to put this all in scope and context. Obviously, VR itself is incredibly niche. PSVR, right? For a long time, PSVR was the highest selling VR console or setup, and that was really only 3% maybe 4%. I don't know. It's up for debate of total PSVR sale or PS4 sales. So incredibly small group, which honestly, PS4 owners themselves are a niche. You might think everyone has a PS4. It's not really the case, right? And then VR on PC is about 2% of Steam. And then if you think about Steam is a niche within all of PC usage, right? And then standalone VR there's like 15 to 20 million users, right? But that's not really the whole story, because whenever you're talking about standalone units, really there's no limit. And so the goals of a hardware and software developer, in my opinion, are to bring mainstream people in, is to bring people into this thing, to either buy your software, buy your hardware, or use, or to use the platforms that you're building. And there's so many ways to do this. There's the tried and true way, which is, all right, what's popular? What can we build? What's a game that brings something of value to VR, right? And that's a totally decent idea, I would say, right? It's very safe. But I have a little bit of a case study in the most popular titles, most popular pieces of VR software that are being actually used. And I just want to look at a few basic applications. Let's look at Rec Room. Let's look at Gorilla Tag. Let's look at Bone Lab, and let's look at VR Chat. Those are just 4 titles that I picked because they're ones that I really enjoy and ones that I know have a very active user base. And if you look at some things that all these things do, of course there are some similarities. There are some things that are very obvious, like they're social. They allow for a portrayal of anything that you'd like. So, for example, I am an anime girl in VR Chat. I'm not always, but I choose to be today, right? And that's a pretty powerful thing. Really, all these things offer something just a little bit different than what you can experience on, for example, a flat screen monitor. They offer a VR-centric experience. Almost all these things you can also experience on flat screen, but it's not the same experience. And one thing that I want to break down, because I think a lot of people get this wrong, is that all these games, except for Bone Lab, right, they're all social. And that's amazing. I think that's one of the things that many people love about VR Chat. That's why I love coming into VR Chat, because I get to go hang out with people and everything. But I don't think it's necessarily the social part that of why it's so appealing and why it's such an attractor for VR people and VR enthusiasts. And that goes the same thing with Bone Lab and Gorilla Tag and Rec Room. really it's about the immersion and the social features that come along with these applications, with the exception of, like I said, being Bone Lab. The social part happens to be the most immersive part of it. There's really no objective here in VR chat. There's nothing to do. We're on a beach. That's pretty cool. But I'm on a beach alone. I could be on a beach with friends. I could be on a beach anywhere. And that's pretty amazing. But like I said, it's the immersion of the social features that really bring people in. Because if you look at all these apps, none of them are user-friendly. None of them have any goals. None of them have real objectives. It's all about the immersive component. And so I would say that a lot of the success of VR, what makes something successful in VR, it doesn't have to be social. It doesn't have to be, the highest cutting-end graphics. It doesn't have to be any of these things. But what it has to be is immersive. And what this means is that the easy thing of building something in VR that already exists in, for example, flat screen, is probably not the best approach for things. And so something that I've been really, really working on in terms of talking with the community, talking with hundreds of thousands of people, is figuring out what people really want. And it really gets back to the immersive components. And it's something that I don't see a lot of people building for, and that is building for that, the whole theme of this is building for that niche that doesn't really exist. Trying out things that maybe aren't totally safe. Building for possibly the smaller audience. Building for hardware and software that maybe doesn't have the largest demographic, but it allows you to build the most compelling pieces of software. And this also goes for building certain hardware for different platforms and seeking integration. Because I think that one thing that we're missing right now, VR, I'm just talking about VR itself right now, went from this spot where anything is possible, all these crazy pieces of software we're releasing, and then we kind of went down this little path where it's like, all right, let's mimic what succeeded and worked in standard gaming. Let's make these big AAA blockbuster games. And ironically, those are all the ones that perform some of the worst. I really hate this. I hate's a really strong word, but I don't like this idea of butt in VR. And that's something that I think a lot of people, we're now learning is it's a good thing to not like. If you ask somebody a few years ago, or maybe somebody that doesn't have VR, what game would you like but in VR? And I'll just put a quick example of a game that I like, Overwatch, right? Imagine Overwatch but in VR. What does that mean? Does that mean just taking the exact core mechanics and bringing it straight into VR like a one-to-one port? It could, and that's what many studios have tried. And I don't think it's a compelling enough use case for VR. And it's, frankly, what you end up is kind of with a watered-down game that doesn't feel as robust, because obviously a lot of our budgets are a lot smaller in the VR space. It doesn't feel quite as robust as the flat screen component. It doesn't feel, things don't work quite as well. And you end up with something that honestly is a better experience in flat screen. And that's not what VR is all about. And so this whole idea of but in VR, I think needs to be shifted. It's not what if this was in VR, it's what can we do with VR? And the only way that we're going to get there is by building for the niche. For example, I'll give Gorilla Tag, one of the most successful pieces of VR software ever made. It's free with the simplest concept ever in the universe. You are a gorilla and you're getting chased. It's Tag. And that turned out to be one of the most popular things ever. Why? That would not be fun playing on your monitor. I'll just say flat out and straight up, not a good time. But you know what is a good time? Climbing all over trees and chasing your friends and jumping all over things. It's something that only VR can offer, and that can only really be brought through experimentation and building for niches. Don't be so afraid of not selling to the mainstream audience that doesn't have a VR headset. Really, right now, it's all about building for the people that do have VR headsets that are already in, and that's what's going to attract in this mainstream audience. Of course, this is just the opinion of a YouTuber, but like I said, my entire job, everything I've ever done is built upon looking at what people want and looking at what people are possibly interested in. And if there's one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of the mainstream audience is really, really just, they're missing something, right? And real quick before I'm done here, I'll talk about the hardware side of it as well. So I did something a little stupid, way too early, but I tried to build as close to a real life Ready Player One setup as possible. And this was actually both a success and failure. Turns out none of the hardware worked with each other. The software wasn't compatible with this hardware, and it was just a giant mess. And really, the systems that are built currently just aren't ready for everything to be coming together. We're not Ready Player One. Like, we're literally not ready for Ready Player One, right? And so I'm thinking right now, if there's a few words that I could say to people that are developing and building is pursue that. Let's build it. Because people are interested. People want it. And it might not be the 20 million. It might not be the 100 million. It might not be the 5. It might not be the 1. But once you have this core group that are offering something really special that can't be had anywhere else, that's what's actually going to bring people in. Not copying, not bringing this ideology of, but in VR. It's all about what can we do in VR? So, I think this is something that I'm also pursuing really hardcore in terms of developing as well. But I think that this is going to take some time, take some lessons, and we have to rethink and relearn and build for the niche that doesn't exist. So I think that actually cuts about my time, but I probably have a few more things that I could say. Let me go check. Anyways, I really hope that you guys enjoyed for the most part. This whole MC Summit's really amazing, and it turned out to be way cooler than I initially thought, and I see a lot of really, really cool names here. So, yeah, I believe that's all it.